Is weird, odd, strange, or just plain bizarre is really your cup of tea? Then, the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast will give you that fix. Can't believe it? Well, listen for yourself as we deliver the strangest news you definitely won't find on CNN or Fox. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Weird News Podcast.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the GSMC Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you my favorite weird news stories of the past few days. Starting us off this week, Nicolas Cage plays a truffle hunter in an upcoming film. If you guys are people that follow Nicolas Cage, it's a weird guy. I have a sister that did a film thesis on Nick Cage and his films. Fascinating subject, him. So his latest film, Pig, follows an Oregon truffle hunter as he searches for a kidnapped pig in Portland. So, big ideas coming out of Hollywood. You know, new movie stars Nicolas Cage as the truffle hunter looking to retrieve his kidnapped pig. The elevator pitch might have been something like Taken meets Babe. Pig is the title of the project. Directed by Michael Sronowski. That's it, Sronowski, based on a story that he co-wrote with Vanessa Block. According to IMDb, first feature film for both of them. And they went with Nicolas Cage. I wonder what happened to Nicolas Cage in a past life that determined him to be doing this kind of crap. You know? It's not to insult you if this is your film, but a truffle hunter? Kidnap pig? Yeah? What began as a very personal project has transformed into a labor of love for so many talented people. Well, now I feel bad for what I said. I'm thrilled for us all to be bringing this strange world to life. Strange world, indeed. Michael's vision for Pig is a true testament of his unique voice as a writer-director, and one that we can't wait to introduce to our audiences across the world, added Thomas Bensky of Pulse Films, one of the companies producing project. Having such an incredible cast attached, led by Nicolas Cage and supported by Alex Wolff, speaks directly to the special nature of the story that Michael and Vanessa have devised. Though Oregon truffle hunting might seem like an odd concept for a movie, this won't be the first time that the state's truffle industry has been mined for drama. Back in 2015, the Discovery Channel aired Unearthed, a reality show that followed the drama in the forest as the truffle foragers of Oregon battle each other over a decreasing number of productive truffle patches, and everything on the line hopes of a big payoff, as the show is described on Amazon. It's a risky business as they face the elements, animal predators, and fellow hunters who are willing to set traps, sabotage patches, and do whatever it takes to find the buried treasure. Unearthed only lasted one season of 5 episodes, but didn't star Nicolas Cage. Needless to say, the expectations of Pig are much higher. Now, this isn't the first time that Nicolas Cage has done weird things. He's kind of known for being a weird guy. If you don't know who he is, that's why he fits on weird news. So, I decided to tell you about some weird stuff that's happened to Nick Cage in his past. First one, discussing his home invasion thriller, Trespass in 2011, Cage shared with reporters that he was once victimized by someone who had broken into his Orange County home. I opened my eyes, and there was a naked man wearing my leather jacket, eating a fudgesicle on the foot of my bed. I know it sounds funny, but it was horrifying. Cage said he talked to the man until the police arrived. Doesn't that sound like the plot of a Nick Cage movie? You know, doesn't that sound like something that, like it would be like another Nick Cage, you know? In 1997, comic book fan Cage purchased a copy of Action Comics #1, the highly sought-after 1939 issue that introduced Superman and ushered in the 20th century superhero genre. That comic book, along with several other rare titles, were stolen from Cage's home in January 2000, in a case that went cold for 11 years before the book showed up in San Fernando Valley storage locker. The locker's owner said that he purchased the unit without knowing what was inside, and after a police investigation, the comic was returned to Cage, who sold it then for a $2.1 million later that same year. Cage called the retrieval of the comic after a decade divine providence. Standing in St. Louis Cemetery #1 in New Orleans, 9-foot pyramid tomb that carries a Latin maximum omni ab uno, everything from one. The grave underneath is currently unoccupied, but some have speculated it might eventually house Cage, who purchased twin plots in 2010 and built a pyramid over them. The actor has never publicly commented on the sale. While promoting Ghost Rider, The Spirit of Vengeance in 2011, actor Idris Elba recalled an incident on location in Romania that exemplifies Cage's professional commitment. Noticing Cage appeared tired that day, Elba asked if he'd gotten any rest. "Yeah, man. I went up to Dracula's castle, the ruins up on the mountains, and stayed the night." Cage said, "I just had to channel the energy, and it was pretty spooky up there." Cage was probably referring to Bran Castle near Transylvania, which might have been the inspiration for Dracula's residence in the original Bram Stoker novel. Cage's extravagant spending habits have been well documented, though a few purchases have matched his grandiose gesture of spending $276,000 for a Tyrannosaurus Batar skull in a 2007 auction. What Cage didn't know is that the skull had been stolen from Mongolia's Gobi Desert. Contacted by the Department of Homeland Security in 2014, the actor agreed to hand it over to be returned, which also sounds like the plot of a Nick Cage movie. Appearing as a guest on David Letterman's late night show in 2010, Cage was armed with the valuable talk show anecdote. Early in his career, he owned a cat named Lewis, who enjoyed partaking in Cage's stash of magic mushrooms. Finally, Cage decided that he should have some too, and Lewis was on the desk across the bed for hours. He stared at me, and I had no doubt that he was my brother. I mean, that's like a Nick Cage movie meets Seth Rogen, isn't it? And finally, in October 2017, Cage aficionados in Japan were delighted to see the actor's face on packages of crunchy corn snack called Deluxe Umbanu Nicola Stick. Nick Cage is a snack in Japan. Anyway, when we come back from the break, a Quebec man has a weird story. I don't want to give too much away, so you'll have to come back to find out. Stay tuned.
Check Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. We were talking some weird stories about Nick Cage. And now that we're back, I'll reveal this Quebec story. A Quebec man who police say ran away and jumped into a river when officers tried to give him a breathalyzer test will face several charges. Quebec Provincial Police Claude Dennis said the man was pulled over early on Sunday morning after cutting off a patrol vehicle. The 29-year-old suspect then jumped into the river about 45 kilometers south of Quebec City. Dennis added that the authorities believe the man might have been inebriated at the time. I'd say if he jumped in the river to avoid a breathalyzer test, chances are he probably was. He said the suspect had been arrested several hours later, and he was spotted walking down the road wearing wet clothes that included a stolen pair of firefighters' pants. Investigators believe the man broke into the shed where the clothes were stored after he escaped from the river. And he decided to wear the pants because it was cold. The suspect, who is known to police, will remain in custody pending a court appearance on Monday. He's expected to face a number of charges, including obstructing police, refusing to undergo approved screening device, breaking and entering, theft, and mischief. So, don't jump into the river to avoid a crime or a criminal charge, or you're just going to get a worse punishment. This was kind of a weird one, so I thought I would tell you about some of the weird crimes that have happened in America recently. A man in Arizona wearing reindeer slippers managed to dash away from the scene, but law enforcement caught up to him anyway. Austin Sherbut, 26, was arrested in December after being seen on a surveillance video trying to take a woman's wheelchair out from underneath her while on board a train in Phoenix. Authorities credited hero passengers on the light rail for coming to a woman's rescue, and Sherbut and he was nabbed after thousands shared his picture online. Despite the reindeer slippers, this criminal was not spreading holiday cheer, said the Phoenix Police Department. Noted that he was still wearing reindeer slippers when he was arrested. Some bank robbers make very little effort, shall we say, to conceal their identity. Michael Harrell is of no exception of this sector of criminals. He was arrested in August this past year after ordering a teller to hand over cash from a U.S. bank location in Cleveland using a note that had his full name and address on it. It was reportedly written on the back of a document from the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles. The teller referred to Harrell by his name and gave him an unknown amount of money before calling 911, according to investigators. He was taken into custody a few days later, and unsurprisingly, an FBI agent said When you present a note that has your name on it and an address, it helps law enforcement tremendously. He really saved a lot of work for them there. Actually, it was quite thoughtful of him. Police workers in Kansas arrested a man in November for driving a stolen SUV to bail out his brother, who had been jailed only hours earlier for stealing a separate SUV. So the first sibling, Eric Dean McCracken, was arrested for driving a Chevy Trailblazer with a suspended license. And police revealed that they learned the SUV had been stolen, and hours later his younger brother, Keith Ray McCracken, was arrested after leading deputies on a short chase in a stolen 2015 Chevy Silverado. At least they're loyal to their brands. And the authorities were tracking it through the GPS. I believe that the younger McCracken was en route to the Jacksonville County Jail to post bail on his older brother in a stolen vehicle. They've since been reunited in jail, so it ended up being kind of a lovely little story. A New York woman went viral in September after being caught on video dancing in front of a big cat in the Bronx Zoo. Maya Autry breached the African lion's enclosure and was standing just feet away from a ferocious lion who simply stares back, baffled by the woman's presence. As per the New York Post, the woman later posted videos and photos of the close encounter on Instagram, even going so far as to taunt the NYPD, who'd sought her on 2 counts of criminal trespassing after she broke into the lion's den and a giraffe enclosure. She eventually was tracked down and arrested in November. A man applied for a position at a sporting goods store in Wyoming in April, allegedly stole from the business twice in the same day. The 36-year-old man first bought some items with a rewards card, but did not pay for a pair of sunglasses and ammunition while he was there. And he returned about 3 hours later to ask for a job application. The man allegedly left the store after the encounter with 2 more pairs of sunglasses, according to the newspaper. The suspect, whose job application actually wasn't clear, was cited for the alleged thefts. Police are recovering the items. And that is roughly the plot of Empire Records, for those of you 90s fans that remember that. In South Carolina, police in June charged a woman in Walhalla with public intoxication after she was found cruising down the road in a silver Power Wheels truck, not far from her home. 25-year-old Megan Holman avoided a DUI charge because her mode of transportation was a toy, not a vehicle. When investigators asked Holman to explain the situation, she said that she was riding the toy truck as part of a scavenger hunt, and she wanted to be a professional wrestler like her father, and this is how to do it. And finally, 3 women in August were caught on camera allegedly stealing a baby stroller from a New Jersey store, only to be busted by one of them forgetting their kid inside the shop. 2 women had distracted the employee at the Middletown store, with a 3rd woman going into the front to grab a stroller. The woman left the store and a kid behind. So, oopsie. Investigators later arrested 2 of the women, and the stolen stroller was returned. People can be pretty dumb. When we come back, the weird ways that people have been making money to pay for their ever-increasingly expensive educations. So we'll be talking about that stuff when we come back from our break. Don't go anywhere.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. Before we left for the break, we were talking about a couple of odd crimes that had happened this past year. And now, in Austin, Texas, University of Austin, Texas, the most popular college university in the Lone Star State, is also the most popular for sugar babies. Online dating site claims Sugar Baby University, a scholastic branch of the world's largest sugar daddy mama dating site, seeking arrangement, recently released a report detailing universities most attended by its registered users. According to KPRC in Houston, Sugar Baby University says it currently has over 8 million users, 8 million female sugar baby users, and 3 million male sugar babies. Meanwhile, the site lists 2 million sugar daddies and only 370,000 sugar mamas. University of Texas came in first statewide and 14th nationwide. Here's the breakdown here. Number first was the University of Texas, Austin, with over 1,000 students, 1,118. Number two, Texas A&M University is 997. Third is Texas State at 945. University of Texas, 887. And then there's University of Houston, North Texas, Texas Tech, Texas Arlington, Houston Community College, Texas Rio Grande Valley, Texas at El Paso, Texas at Dallas, Dallas Community College, and Austin Community College District. You're slacking behind there, Austin Community College District. Get more sugar stuff around there. Seeking arrangement claims that 30% of its registered sugar babies use their money for tuition and other school-related expenses. For some student loan debt statistics, there are about 43 million total federal student loan borrowers, and about 1.4 trillion is outstanding federal student loan debt. Federal Student Aid 2019 reports incidents that there are about 5.2 million federal loan borrowers currently in default. Private student loans make up about 8% of the outstanding student loans in the U.S. And the total outstanding private student loan debt is around $130 billion. Out of these loans, 1.46 are over 90 days overdue. 37% of 2018 high school graduates did not complete their free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, leaving on average about $3,908 on the table. Total money left unclaimed, not using the FAFSA, is $2.6 billion. So what are ways that students have been paying for these astronomical fees? Number one, sell your body, but not that way. You can sell your plasma or even your hair, legally sold for money. Plasma will earn you some pocket change, or whereas hair can be sold for quite a bit more. You can participate in a clinical trial. I actually did this while I was in university. You can do part for your science and earn some cash on the side by participating in a clinical trial. Clinical trials are often intended for people who have specific medical conditions in the hopes of seeing how they respond to new treatments. However, some clinical trials also recruit healthy adults for a control group. So if you don't mind being poked and prodded like a guinea pig, you can find clinical trials by going to clinicaltrials.gov. And you can use the advance to find out who accepts healthy volunteers. If you have access to a truck or trailer, you can collect old metal items and head to your local scrapyard. You need to do a little research to learn what items can be scrapped and where to find them, but this can be a lucrative niche for those who know what they're doing. You can walk some dogs, Get a website, get on one of those dog walking websites. You can post an ad on Craigslist or contact local kennels to see if they need anyone to exercise canines under their care. Not a bad situation, if I do say so myself. You can house sit. You can house sit. There's several websites that offer potential sitters to connect their homeowners who need someone to keep their eye on their house for an extended period. It's a good way to see the world. If you have the appropriate visas to travel and look. Advertise locally for people who are willing to pay you to check in on their house. Perform some light maintenance like lawn mowing. Various types of websites make it easier to create simple designs. Online marketplaces for freelancers allow you to sell your creative skills. So if you can do that. You can become a translator if you're multilingual. The U.S. Department of Labor reports that interpreters and translators are one of the fastest growing occupations in the nation. Demand for these professionals is expected to jump more than 18% by the year 2026. You can work at home as a customer sales rep. If you dial a company's 1-800 number, you may be speaking to someone wearing fuzzy slippers sitting on their couch. There's the top 25 companies to work from home. And customer service is a big one for that. So, get that going. You can join a focus group. Companies are willing to pay customers to provide feedback on products and share their thoughts on a new idea. Often this is done with focus groups, which are typically members compensated for their time. Opportunities for focus groups are better than larger metro opportunities or metro areas, but many marketers are moving to online decisions to include consumers nationwide. You can rent out a room. You can rent your space. You can rent your friendship. You can become a tutor, sell items on eBay, become a mystery shopper, crowdfund your dreams, and anything else you can think of. So don't give up just yet. And when we come back, a weird gift that was given to the Pope. So stay tuned for that,
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back. All right, when we left off, we were talking about some weird ways to make money to pay for your school. And now, Pope Francis was presented with a Patrick Mahomes jersey on Thursday. Bishop James Johnson, who leads the Catholic Diocese of Kansas City, Joseph gave the pontiff the jersey when he met with him, according to the Catholic News Service. Johnson had invited Samarian Paul Sappington, a guest, to meet the Pope. After Bishop Johnson took the Pope's hand, he introduced me to the Pope. Following this, Bishop Johnson presented the Pope with a signed jersey. At this point, Pope Francis' face lit up. He chuckled, and the Kansas City Chiefs, our region, Ajax's football team, Region 4. I don't know anything about football, guys. And they're playing the AFC Championship game this weekend. Pope Francis gave them a thumbs up and said something to the effect that sports are good. And it's good for them to play sports. Pope Francis is known to be a big fan of other football, soccer, whatever you want to call it. And Catholic News Service noted that he was smiling while looking at the jersey, so that's nice. And in honor of that, some weird Pope stories. The young Pope from the show Young Pope was based off of, Lenny Bellardo, is not actually the youngest Pope ever. That goes to either Pope John the 12th, who was 18 at his election, Pope Benedict, who was somewhere between 10 years and 20, not sure. And though Benedict might have been the youngest, he was also known for serving per pope more than once. He's had 3 separate terms. And there was another pope in between some of those terms. So, that's odd, that's crazy, that's different. You don't hear about that a lot. Back and forth, it was just a startup at first, maybe. Benedict's first term ended because he was run out of town. But he took the papacy back from the newly elected Sylvester the old-fashioned way. The Catholic way, by force. Benedict's second term ended when he abdicated of his own volition and sold the papacy to his godfather Gregory the Sixth, who ended up resigning because you're not supposed to be able to buy that honor. Benedict became a pope third time after the successor died, before taking the force again in 1047. The legend of Pope Joan describes a woman who distinguished herself as a man, rose through the ranks to priesthood, and was elected pope in 855. The story goes that she was found out when they found out when she went into labor and gave birth during a papal procession before being stoned to death by the crowd. This is almost certainly not true, because the first accounts of Pope Joan didn't actually surface till the 13th century, so it's likely just a story, though we're not sure. Another Pope legend surrounding Pope Fabian in 236. He was allegedly just a regular guy from the county who was in Rome during the papal election. As the story goes, when a dove landed on his head, he was believed to have had a divine sign, and he was the first Pope elected by acclamation. The Pope, who began the tradition of changing his name after being chosen, Pope John II, was elected in 533, whose birth name was Mercurius. He decided having a pope with the name of a pagan god might not be a good thing. Every pope after John chooses a new name on being elected. More than 1,000 years after John, the final pope to use his birth name was Marcello Cervini, who went by Pope Marcellus after being chosen in 1555. He only lasted 20 days being pope before he died. Pope Leo, elected in 1513, was the last pope who wasn't even a priest, actually, before being chosen. He'd been ordained as a priest and a bishop, but he had to take on the role as pontiff. The largest papal conclave began in 1268 and didn't end until Gregory X was chosen in 1271, lasting just under 3 years. Back then, they had to conclave whenever the Pope was when he died. Apparently, the residents were not happy with the cardinal setting up shop there for so long. The oldest pope, when elected, was Clement X, who was 79 years old, 1670. Current Pope Francis is the 9th oldest at 76. His predecessor, Benedict, comes in 5th by being 78. In 903, the anti-pope Christopher took the papacy by force from Pope Leo. But Christopher was then deposed in 904 before Pope Sergius III was elected. Sergius III then, according to legend, both Leo and Christopher had them killed in prison. What does that remind you of? Just take a moment to think about that. And this made Sergius III the only pope to allegedly have his predecessor killed. And finally, Sergius III may have also had been the illegitimate father of Pope John the 11th. If that was true, it would make Sergius III the only pope ever to have fathered another pope. So those are some crazy pope facts. It's wild, that stuff that goes on with these popes, absolutely wild stuff. I thought it was thrilling. You thought it was thrilling. We all thought it was thrilling in a way. And when we return, even more thrilling are some crazy, crazy things that have come out, mostly on Reddit, from, in Canada. Crazy stuff from Canada. I hope you enjoy it, so stay tuned for that. We'll be back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right, welcome back, you guys. Talked a lot about, Pope stories. Why not? Right? And now some weird stuff out of Canada. On Thursday, a Reddit user posted the simple question in a Canadian subreddit, On Guard for Thee. What's the most stereotypically Canadian thing that's ever happened to you? And being Canada, people were happy to answer. For many, it was the very relatable scenario of bumping into someone or getting bumped into and both parties apologizing profusely. It's probably more than just an I'm going to sneak right past it being uttered. I was visiting the Royal Tyrrell Museum with some friends. Everyone was bunched up in a small, dark display hallway. A guy with a stroller bumped into me. I apologized. The stroller guy apologized and my friend apologized. All within maybe 6 seconds. Standout comment reveals many of the posted scenarios are downright outrageous, and you can't believe everything posted on a vaguely anonymous social network, but the idea of these things happening is undeniably delightful. A user from Calgary wrote that their uncle owns maple trees that produce syrup, and a mishap with a pair of moose somehow managed to disrupt the lives of two other iconic Canadian animal species. One day, two younger moose got into a fight nearby and knocked sap buckets off of the maple trees, getting maple sap everywhere. Upon which time, the Canadian geese in the pond decided to go for a frolic in the sap and tar-feathered themselves all over the beaver dam built in the creek attached to the pond. Added that it sounds unbelievable, and I can't tell you how unbelievable it does sound, but in all likelihood it's probably true. Other people had just cartoonish mishaps, involving other Canadian animals, perhaps being chased into a herd of bison while avoiding a moose and several bear encounters. There's a joke in Canada that you're always 1 degree away from a bear because either you or someone has been attacked by a bear. There's a playwright in Canada called Daniel McIver, if you've not heard of him, who either has a bear attack in every play or has someone talk about a bear attack that happened to him or her in any play. It's bonkers, but it does reflect the true Canadian story. Some excuses for Canadian children include, but a black bear ate my homework. Which is also true of this person who says a black bear ate their homework in grade 7. Years my later excuse for being away from the keyboard was that I had to chase a bear off the porch. There's no negative stories in this subreddit, obviously, because Canada is adorable. Not perfect, but it's weird. Many of the stories emphasize the stereotypical politeness that Canadians are so well known for. I was traveling to work in LA for the first time. I added a weekend to the end so that I could sightsee a bit, and I popped into a cafe, to get something to drink. On my way out, I saw someone coming in, so I opened the door and held it for them to enter before I exited. The woman said, "Oh no, you go ahead." And then I said, "Oh no, come on, it's hot out there." And she said, No, I don't want to hold you up. No problem at all. Holding the door. A guy behind me just blew past at her and saying that, "Jesus, what are you, Canadian or something?" In not so friendly a tone, which I replied, "Yes, I'm from Toronto." "Have a good one, eh?" And the woman replied, "No way, I'm from Sudbury." In a related story, another poster said they ran into an older man when backpacking in Germany. He said that they spent time in Canada as a prisoner of war in World War II. The country was so beautiful and everyone was so nice. "I wish I could have gone back," the older man told him. Other stories included running into the nation's women's hockey team at Tim Hortons and seeing multicultural ground crew outside of Toronto Pearson Airport, wearing shorts outside, eating ice cream and laughing until January. It's pretty agreeable. We can all agree on is that Canadians are polite and relatable. Some weird things about Canada. Canada only got its flag 100 years after it became a country. On the 15th of February, 1965. Part of Canada is on Mars. A crater of the planet was named after the town of Gander in Newfoundland in honor of its efforts in space research. The famous Canadian interjection "a" is actually listed in the Canadian Oxford English Dictionary as a valid word. The Canadian Mint once made a gigantic loonie made out of 99% gold that was worth $1 million. You can write a letter in any language. And send it to the North Pole with HOH, OHO, Canada, and you'll receive a letter back from Santa. Quebec's manufactures more than 77% of the world's maple syrup. Canada shares the largest dematerialized border in the world with the United States. Townspeople of Nanaimo, BC race their bathtubs as part of an annual aquatic tradition. Some of the world's most popular superheroes were Canadian mines, including Superman and Wolverine. It's against Canadian law to have comics depict criminal acts. Canada is home to the Narcissi snake pits of Manitoba, the oiliest garter snakes in the world. 20% of the world's fresh water is in Canada. Canada has more lakes than any other country, and the most common last name in Canada is Lee. Alberta's Banff National Park overpasses go over highways are made for wildlife and have trees and shrubs growing on them. The third official language of Canada is Goose. Only in Canada it goes from negative 19 degrees to 22 in an hour. Accurate. Ogopogo is a mythical monster like the Loch Ness Monster in the Okanagan in BC. Our national sport is lacrosse. Westboro Baptist Church and its members are banned from entering in Canada. Hawaiian pizza was invented by an Ontario man. The Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia, you can run on the seabed and not so in the Not Since Moses run, but you have to make it across before the 100 billion tons of water rush back in. There's an area in the Hudson Bay region that has less gravity than the rest of the planet. 30% of Canada is covered in trees and thick forest. Canada has been invaded twice by America in 1775 and 1812. And Canada has been prosperous in those. When we come back, we're going to continue with this before moving on to some shower thoughts, so stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before we left, we were talking about some weird things happening in Canada. We're going to finish that off before we go to our shower thoughts. So back to weird laws in Canada. Prostitution laws in Canada are hazy. Purchase of sexual services are criminalized, but the selling of sexual services are allowed under certain conditions. The largest Sony big screen TV can be found in Toronto's Rogers Centre. Canada consumes more mac and cheese than any other country in the world. Old Quebec is still walled off and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The lowest temperature ever recorded in Canada was negative 63 degrees. And the 1-800 number is 1-800 Oh, Canada. That is it for our Canadian facts. And now let's go to Reddit, where we have the greatest shower thoughts of all time. All right, let's get this bad boy going. Waterboarding in Guantanamo Bay sounds super rad if you don't know what either of those things are. Maybe Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader isn't a show that displays how stupid grown adults can be, but rather how much useless information we teach grade schoolers that won't be retained or applicable later in life. Go to bed, you'll feel better in the morning is the human version of Did You Turn Off and On Again? Person would proofread Hitler's speeches was truly a grammar Nazi. Sweden playing Denmark is Sweden. The remaining letters not used as Denmark. On April Fool's Day, the porn company should make a video where a hot male plumber goes to a sorority house and fixes the toilet and leaves normally. When you drink alcohol, you're just borrowing happiness from tomorrow. The Google self-driving car should have an I'm feeling lucky button that gives you a random location. As a dishwasher, I come home after hours of work. I get covered in filth, and when I take a shower, I realize that I'm the final dish. What are snails even trying to do? Your shadow is a confirmation that the light travels nearly 93 miles unobstructed, only to be deprived from reaching the ground by these few final feet thanks to you. Instead of all these prequel and sequel movies coming out, they should start making equals. Films shot at the same time period, but from an entirely different perspective. I agree. Wouldn't you like to see, Annie Julia Roberts movie from any of the guys that she's with, or I want to see, Taken from the bad guy's perspective. I want to see what's up there. The Irishman we could probably leave that one. I wish I had a Mario Kart-like ghost of myself punctually getting ready for work in the morning, so I'd know if I was running late. If Obama was the first president of Kenya, he'd be their first white president. Apple has air, Amazon has fire, Google has earth. I think Microsoft should make something called water. It's true. If Katniss and Peeta from the Hunger Games were Hollywood celebrities, their super couple name would be Cat Pee or Penis. Nice. True. The iconic alien is to us what we are to apes. Small, pale, big-headed, with an unfathomable technology. We can even abduct them for medical experiments. Trying to get rich by playing the lottery is like trying to commit suicide by flying commercial airlines. They should announce the sequel to Groundhog Day and then re-release the original. Being attracted to your own flaccid penis would be the worst fetish ever. It's true. I wonder if my dog always follows me into the bathroom when I have to go potty because I follow him outside when he does and he just thinks that's the way it works. How cute is that? I heard that they do that because they're protecting you at your most vulnerable, though, and I think that's cuter. I didn't exist in the world until you started reading this sentence of mine. Whoa. The word fat just looks like someone took a bite out of the first letter of the word eat. That's very funny. The real unsung hero in School of Rock is the promoter who got about 2,000 people to a local battle of the bands at a weekday morning. The share button on Reddit should read, spread it. For most of human history, vehicles had automatic collision avoidance that you could take home when you were sleeping. Then we got rid of the horse. Your stomach thinks all potato is matched. Google Maps should have an on-the-way feature for the most convenient gas station Starbucks. I think, well, there is an app called Waze that does that. The witches from Sabrina having a cat named Salem is like a Jewish family with a cat called Auschwitz. Oh, that's true. I've never thought of that. If Homer Simpson were a Democratic congressman from Springfield, he'd be Homer Simpson D.O. because Ohio. Me not being able to watch the interview is the first time I've ever directly been affected by North Korea. What if every country has ninjas, but we only know about the Japanese ones because they're rubbish? If you would mount garbage trucks with cameras, you could weekly update Google Maps Street View. During childhood, we're all told that jokes about genital areas are adult content, but since we become adults, they're considered childish. Seeing as how Batman and Iron Man's only real superpowers are that they're rich and super cool and very smart, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs turned out to be disappointments. If I touch my phone in the right places, a pizza will show up at my front door. Nice, nice, nice. Adblock should buy out signs on Times Square and replace them with, "This ad has been blocked out by Adblock." Nice. It'd be good. Publicity, I guess, yeah. Right? Centaurs have 2 rib cages. What? Crazy. Every day, someone on Earth unknowingly does the biggest poo in the world that day. Well, that's cool. I wonder what my dog named me. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. And that's it. So, thank you once again for tuning in here, for being a part of this with me. That was a particularly weird one for me. A lot of stuff about Canada in there, being weird. Some great stuff about Nick Cage. What a hero. Weird, weird guy. Good stuff. So thanks for listening to the Weird News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Please remember to subscribe to the show and write us a nice review. And rate the episode. Really helps us. Also, please subscribe to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to me on those things. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And I will talk to you all soon.